Welcome to AITS Podcast on AI Security. In this episode, we will look into discovery and collection techniques used by hackers to compromise AI systems. Let's get started.
Ever feel like all your data is out there just kind of swirling around in the digital world?
It's not just swirling, right?
Right, not just floating around freely, it's being targeted.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving into a world where attackers are going after the AI, the machine learning models that power, well, almost everything these days.
It's one thing to worry about your credit card info. That's scary enough. But imagine someone stealing the brains behind the operation.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a whole other level.
That's already happening. Look at that OpenAI thing with the GPT-3 API.
Right. Everyone was talking about that.
Attackers got around their defenses, made the AI generate some really interesting stuff.
Yeah. Interesting might be an understatement there.
And remember that Capital One breach a while back, misconfigured cloud storage? Always comes back to bite you.
So these AI models, they're powerful, but it sounds like they might be more vulnerable than we think. Before we get into how they're vulnerable, can we define what we're even talking about here? What are we trying to protect?
Think of it like this. It's less about hacking the AI's code itself and more about understanding the blueprint of how it thinks. You build a fortress, but if someone gets the blueprints,
they know exactly where to find the weak points.
Exactly. Those little details that can have huge consequences.
So how do these attackers get their hands on these blueprints?
Like a detective, they've got their methods. Let's call it method one, shall we? Public APIs.
APIs, okay. Break that down for me.
So companies often give developers access to their AI models through APIs, application programming interfaces. For developers, it's great, but for attackers, it's a roadmap. By analyzing responses to, let's say, carefully crafted questions, they can start to reverse engineer how the AI thinks, how it works. Imagine being able to predict what a sentiment analysis model will say just by feeding it certain phrases.
So it's like learning the AI's language.
Exactly. And once they know how it responds, they can manipulate it.
That's kind of creepy. Okay, what about method two?
Careless mistakes. Simple as that.
Like what?
That Tesla data leak. They left, essentially, the keys to their self-driving system out in the open.
I remember that. Wasn't it a cloud storage issue?
Exactly. Super sensitive data about how their cars see the world just sitting out there online.
So a small oversight can snowball.
Any organization using AI can make these mistakes. And it's not just the AI model itself. You got to bake security into everything, especially that cloud storage.
Don't leave the back door open.
Exactly. And then there's method three, application behavior analysis. It's all about observation. They watch how an app responds to things, different actions, and they can figure out if there's an AI behind it and even how it's structured.
Wait, so just by using an app, I could be giving away clues about the AI running it?
Think about when you're shopping online. The recommendation engine, right? It suggests things based on what you've clicked before. Attackers, they can reverse engineer the AI's process just by watching those suggestions.
It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs right to the AI's door.
You got it.
Okay, so we've seen how these attackers, they're like digital detectives, right? They're casing the joint, finding the AI, figuring out its weaknesses. But the real prize is the data itself, isn't it?
That's where the detective work ends and, let's say, the heist begins.
Love it. So how do they actually pull it off? What does a data heist look like in the digital world?
First, they got to find a way in, right? So they might scan for vulnerabilities. There are tools for this. Nmap's a popular one. They can use that to find open ports, see what's available.
So it's like finding an unlocked window in our fortress.
Exactly. And then there's misconfigured cloud storage. We talked about Tesla, right?
Yeah, happens all the time, unfortunately.
It's amazing how often something like that, just a simple oversight, can leave the door wide open. Imagine an attacker gets into a company's AWS S3 bucket. That's where a lot of companies store their data. It's like
the mother lode.
Right. And they can use a tool like rclone, quietly pull that data to their own server. No one's the wiser.
It's like they've cracked the safe and they're just casually loading up the loot.
And it's not just random grabbing either. These guys are strategic. They've done their homework. They know the data they're after. They might use something like WinSCP to download specific files or even CURL to send, very targeted data to their own servers.
So it's like they're following the blueprints, going room by room, grabbing only the most valuable stuff.
Yeah.
And speaking of blueprints, we've got to talk about ontologies. We touched on them earlier, but how do they fit into this whole data heist scenario?
Think of ontologies as like a map, right? A map of how the AI's brain works, showing how it connects different pieces of information. Attackers get their hands on that. They can manipulate the AI. It's like instead of just stealing the data, they can control what the AI does with it.
So instead of just robbing the bank, they could potentially control the vault.
Imagine an attacker gets the ontology for, say, a financial AI. They could manipulate the system to make terrible investments, maybe even crash the market. And to the AI, it all looks like normal activity because they're speaking its language.
It's like they've gone from stealing the recipe to controlling the kitchen. Okay, so they're in, they've got the data, maybe even figured out how to manipulate the AI itself. How do they disappear without a trace? So they've pulled off this heist, right? Made off with the AI's crown jewels, all that precious data.
Yeah.
But they can't just, put it on a flash drive and call it a day, can they?
Like with any good heist, gotta launder the money, right?
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
They're not just gonna hit the road with a giant stolen data sign, right? They have to cover their tracks, make it impossible to trace the data.
The digital equivalent of a disappearing act.
Exactly. And they've got ways to do it. First, they might compress that data, make it smaller, faster to move, harder to detect. Then encryption. They turn that valuable data into what looks like gibberish if you don't have the key. And then, to really mess with anyone trying to follow them, they split the data up, send it to different servers, different networks.
So it's like they're smuggling out a famous painting, but instead of taking the whole canvas, they cut it into pieces, frame them separately, ship them out all over the place.
Perfect analogy. Remember that Sony Pictures hack? They were in the system for weeks, getting ready, staging their data before they even started to move it out. By the time anyone noticed, it was like trying to catch smoke.
This is all next level stuff. So is there anything we can do to stop it? Or are we just at the mercy of these digital masterminds?
It's not about building an impenetrable fortress, because like we've seen, those don't really exist in the digital world. It's about changing how we think about AI security from the ground up.
Okay, so what can we do?
Awareness is key. Companies need to be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for a breach to happen to start thinking about security.
So bake it into the DNA of their AI from the very beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about fancy tech solutions. We got to talk about the human element. Training employees, making sure everyone knows how to spot, like a phishing attempt, having strong password policies. That basic stuff makes a difference.
Because the strongest lock in the world won't help if someone leaves the key under the mat.
Exactly. And if a breach does happen, having a plan is crucial. Incident response, how fast can you identify it, contain it, hopefully recover that data? That's where being proactive really pays off.
So it's about protecting the whole organization, not just the AI itself.
And honestly, it's not just on companies. We all have a role to play here. Be mindful of your data, what you're sharing online. Understand how these AI tools work, what the risks are. Demand transparency from companies. Know what they're doing with your data.
Ask questions, be aware, and take it seriously.
Absolutely. If we want AI to be a force for good, we got to be able to trust it. And that trust starts with security.
So on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI security. We've talked about how attackers find those vulnerabilities, how far they'll go to get what they want, and what we can do to protect ourselves. It's a complex world out there, but like we always say, knowledge is power. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay curious, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AITS Podcast on AI Security. If you would like to learn more or would like to have a session for your team, please drop us an email on training@alisad.cloud. Learn more about us on our website, alisad.cloud, that is ALASAD, CLOUD.